Greetings and welcome to our first roundtable discussion here at GatherVerse AI Summit 2026. We're so happy to have each of you join us today, and we ask that you would keep your mics muted as we continue to move forward, and we're going to scale into a conversation together. And in this conversation that we'll have together, we ask that you feel free to speak as freely as you will and to be as comfortable as you can. Audience, shall we begin? Today's discussion is on the state of AI from my eyes, from Lynn's perspective, from my lens, and from each of you that have joined us today, not just here on this roundtable, but also from around the world. But in like tradition and good fashion, what we'll do is we'll go to each speaker, and we want you to state who you are, what you're doing, and what inspired you to be here today. We ask that you keep your remarks brief, as we have a lot to be able to scale to. I'll begin with Christy Straw. It's good to see you again.
It's great to see you. It's great to be here. I'm Christy Straw. I work with leadership teams specifically during complex change. And the pattern that I'm seeing everywhere right now is pretty simple, and it's what prompted me to want to contribute today. And it's really that when AI adoption stalls, it's rarely the actual tool. It's typically either guardrails or leadership cadence or decision making that's actually at fault. And so I help teams make the goal and make the guardrails and create the cadence so adoption becomes easier and outcomes happen quicker.
Thank you, Christy. And what inspired you to be here today?
I'm inspired because I continue to see the same thing in all of these consulting meetings that I have. And it really is the fact that AI is highlighting a lack of intelligent human leadership. And that's a terrible situation when trust is the last thing we have left.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Christy Straw. We welcome you. Mary, please.
Hi, everyone. I am calling you from Switzerland today, and I am a change therapist. I work with hypnotherapy and different modes of subconscious therapy, and AI, of course, fascinates me because there are more and more people reaching out nowadays for therapists that are virtual and or not even real. They are AI. So it is very concerning, and therefore I am heavily involved in tech.
And what inspired you to be here with us today, Mary, from beautiful Switzerland?
Definitely the need to talk about what's happening, and it's happening, so there's no changing it. However, there are maybe with conversation we can make a difference. So it's important to get the right people together and to start talking about how to change things or how to deal with them as they change.
Thank you, Mary. We greet you once again, and greetings from Switzerland. I do miss the beauty of the Swiss Alps. James, please. Your mic, sir.
My mic. Hey, Christopher, nice to see you. Russell, nice to see you sitting there as well. Thanks for having me back. I'm James Welniak. So I'm the founder of Cup Advisory, and Cup Advisory is working with teenagers all the way through seasoned adults around their experience with AI. And when I talk about AI, I mean artificial. And so if you look at it, I'm in my 50s. And so you have artificial ingredients, then you had artificial information, and now we have artificial intelligence, speed. And when you take away your choices, our choices are being made for you, AI could take our think away. When you no longer are really focusing on the content, it's just serving up information. Are you really making that decision because you want to, or is that decision being made for you? And looking at it from a trinity of being human, so that's the mind, body, spirit. Do you know your mind? Do you know your mind? Do you use your body with artificial? We got to remember, teach these kids, they got to move their body. There's a lot of counter activity that we could do with the vagus nerve and breathing techniques. And so as we head into more and more artificial, we've got to keep our humanity in check. And that is protecting our mind, protecting our body, so that way we can protect our human spirit, our humanity.
And James, what inspired you to be here today?
So I'm also the face of screen addiction. So screen addiction is a real thing. So this was me, 2023, June 19 to be exact. So I was overdosing boxed wine at home, isolated as a corporate guy, 25 years in corporate industry. I'm a guy from the 70s, born in the 70s. I remember when the life was no screens, and my mother was very much cable TV, no, no, no. My mother's very smart, very intuitive, like you, Christopher. You see what's coming. And so we have to teach people how to protect themselves, not to be scared. I love technology, but there's ways of using technology to really calm your nervous system because you're exposed to so much artificials everywhere. And the question you have to ask yourself, and this is what I ask clients, how artificial are we becoming? Are we losing our humanity? Are we losing our ability to think and to feel and to touch and to sense? And what does that do to our human experience and how we relate to each other, looking at each other in the face, shaking a hand and being a warm, kind person? That stuff is slowly eroding. And so I talk with clients and I talk about my experience and working in the corporate. I was a Deloitte person for 15 years. I understand what it's
James,
like.
let me hold you at
Yeah,
that because
sure.
you have a lot to unpack. I don't want to
Sure.
get too elongated with these introductions. We thank you for your length that you have to give, and you'll have plenty of time to do it.
Thank you, sir.
James, we welcome you. Nagawa, please. Or Nagawa, I hope I'm saying that correctly. If not, please correct me.
It's Nagawa. Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Please intro yourself and let us know what inspired you to be here.
So I'm coming in from London, and I'm basically I'm a consultant from Azure Zenith, and I help purpose-driven entrepreneurs basically adopt AI into the way they work, so that it enhances the way they work, makes it quicker, and also they're using it in an ethical and cultural intelligence way, and they're making sure they're not reproducing biases or making things worse, essentially, so they're still having like positive impact. And what inspired me to be here was because I thought it was important to be part of the conversation, because I realized, especially with nonprofits, there are people who are still scared of AI. And whereas we do know that there are some bad things to AI, there are also some positive things. I'm trying to make it a balanced conversation, so that's why I'm here.
A true statement indeed about people being afraid in NGOs and nonprofits, 501(c)(3)s being intimidated and afraid of artificial intelligence, some candidly with good reason. Nagawa, we're very happy to have you from beautiful London. And Russell, we're happy to see you once again.
Yes, great to be here. And those of you who don't know me, my name is Russell. I am the Global Affairs Director at GatherVerse. I'm also the co-founder and chief visionary officer at JustVerify. And at JustVerify, we're focused on building the trust and infrastructure for AI to make AI trust measurable. And our mission is to verify the integrity and trustworthiness on any AI model so that you can decide which AI to trust, in a nutshell.
And what inspired you to be here today, Russell Bundy?
Other than being dragged in here, no, I'm joking. Honestly, it's really important that we have these discussions, and it's very important that we share knowledge with each other and putting these discussions on the map, because as AI continues to grow at such a rapid pace, which even the top minds like Elon Musk and Sam Altman, etc., who don't even expect like it to be growing at the rate that it is now, it's important that we get this out to as many people as possible and at the forefront and sharing the information with each other. So that's why I'm pretty much here today, to share my knowledge and also to share, what trust really means with AI and how trust can actually be done, and a lot of other stuff as well.
Thank you so much, Russell. We're very happy to have you again. It seems that you and Christy have like mind when it comes to trust, to the sentiment therein, and we look forward to exploring that more. Roundtable, please prepare to engage in this discussion and this conversation that we'll have. In some instances, will be rapid fire audience. In another instance, will be on script and off script. We will have follow-ups, and there will be opportunity for each of you to be able to speak and to be able to share and to contribute from your voice of lens perspective. I want to be able to enter into this and to be able to deliver as much information and extract as much as we can on a very professional grade. We will begin now. When I think about it and where we find ourselves at today, as it was expressed in this opening, in the state of play of artificial intelligence, it seems that many organizations, even in these past several years, Christy, now that they've been introduced to GPT 3.5 and other models where we find ourselves at the 5.2 and the Geminis and all the other different platforms that are out here, such as Claude Code, Montbook, Clawbot, and so many other different platforms that are scaling overnight. And most of the world still has not engaged with these platforms consciously or knowingly. Here's a real concern. When we look at this rapid succession into what Nagawa said about organizations still having the intimidation, still being hesitant to use these models, we've now seen that some organizations, public and both private sector, have been pulling away and scaling with these technologies, building platforms and applications and products and so forth and so on. Leadership in some instances are adopting these technologies where some are very hesitant and won't. It's very interesting to see and find ourselves where we're at today. But no matter where we find ourselves, whether we like it or not, in some way and in a very influential scale, AI will be in our lives whether we want it to or not, given how present society and civilization has been engineered. Christy, I'd like to know from your lens, because you do play a significant role in dealing with executives and leaderships and organizations. I'd like to know what it is that you're seeing here present day in 2026 and other roundtables. Be prepared to be able to have incoming.
Yeah, thank you. Listen, it's not really that most teams are resisting AI, either nonprofit or in corporate, right? They're resisting the ambiguity around it, right? Leaders don't make expectations visible when they're unsure themselves. And so people default to the safest option, which a lot of times is to do nothing or to do only what has been proven or tested so far. And so the framework really that kind of is the workaround for all this is, they have to be clear on the goal. They have to be clear on the guardrails as far as what's allowed and what's not and what requires a review. But then also the cadence, right? What is the check-in so that the friction that all of these teams are mostly experiencing surfaces early instead of becoming a failure later when the tool is blamed. And it's not the tool, because you go to deploy a different automation somewhere else in the company and you have the same response. And so this is where I'm seeing executives get antsy, because what they're realizing is, oh gosh, we have a ton of change to roll out and we don't have the most emotionally intelligent leaders well positioned to do it.
It's very interesting, and I find that fascinating. We will circle back to that, especially in the consideration of guardrails and more. But Mary, I'm coming over to you hard, fast, quick, in a hurry. You talk about the state of play when it comes to psychology and psychotherapy, and that machines, that people are leaning more towards those machines. I want to know about the psychology of executive leaderships, middle managers, and more. I want to understand, are people inept, and have they really wrapped their minds around the magnitude and really the immensity of what it is that's entered into their environments for the very first time, that's moving at such a scale? It's really hard to expect someone to understand what model that they're using, what platform are they using. Everyone's using something different and they all expect the same outcome, but the reality is that it's not. Are people and organizations in this world, especially in the workforce, are they psychologically yet prepared for that which is here and to come?
Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, you look on the social media platforms and you can see that the algorithms are causing people to war with each other, family members to stop talking. I have constant flux of clients who have anxiety through the roof because Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them are telling them something, and it's always different depending on the algorithm, but it is leading people just for the sake of likes and clicks and addiction. It is leading people into very emotional, I would call it freeze. There's flight, fight, and freeze. And freeze is the most dangerous state for people to be in because they are the most hypnotizable and influential. They can be influenced more easily. So
Mary, before
it's
we could move forward with that, please elaborate and draw that out for a moment for all of us that don't have a clear and rather understanding of freeze.
Okay. So freeze is exactly what you're a marketer's dream when you're in freeze. It's where your mind, it surpasses your critical thinking and it goes right into your emotional cortex, your amygdala. And when that happens, you can be kind of influenced in any way. And so when they're using on social media, lots of music, sound, colors, it only takes 12 pieces of information to put someone under hypnosis, to affect their subconscious. And so we're not influencing anymore just on a visual level or an audio level, but we're now allowing AI to influence us, which is even more dangerous because AI is biased.
And are we
It
speaking
depends
to
on the
the
program.
and are we speaking to the persuasion of media psychology with this freeze?
Yeah, I mean, media psychology from the very beginning of time has known that certain rhythms, certain colors, certain images will influence a person. Even tone of voice will influence a person. And so this can be very dangerous. This is where you can get mass hypnosis and you can get cognitive dissidence, where people get fooled and then they just keep going down that path of, well, it's a shaming. And so they continue to go down the path of, this is my truth, and these truths are being made up by not even humans anymore. This is now AI that's playing with us. I mean, you said it earlier that there is now AI talking to itself. What next? And how is this going to affect us? It's very dangerous. The world is in a state of constant tension, constant angst, because of our influence, or being influenced by these sort of outward, powerful, now AI directors.
Sure. And we'll come back and thank you for that brief perspective on state of play, but we will also ascend towards solution if there is one to be met in this dialogue, or more to come. But James, it's so apropos to see both you and Mary sitting next to each other virtually here. You're someone that has been on the other side of that, and that has become, and that has admitted, that has seen it and has suffered and found themselves in the bed of a hospital staring at a ceiling and saying, I have been part of this illness that is rather persistent when it comes to media addiction. James, what has been the impact of this revelation thus far for you?
It saved my life. In this knowing, because Mary, when I was in the hospital, I didn't, before screens, before corporate, before artificial took over our lives, I wasn't a drinker. I didn't drink in grade school. I didn't drink in high school. I was a hyperactive kid, and if you're neurodivergent and you got any kind of sensitivities, my partner's ADHD, if you got any of those things, you're more prone to this type of distraction, to loss of focus. We talk about your amygdala, I call it the inner Amy, your inner Amy. And the thing is that when I was sick and I was box whining at home, I had suicidal thoughts. I was never this person. I was at graduate school. I mean, I struggled in school because I wasn't a conventional learner. I was a visual learner. And so when I started to see robocalls that I can't stop on my phone, and you go through this, and I'm from America, how this is allowed, how this is legal, where you can have robocalls interrupting your focus, and you could be trying to do a meditative, calming your nervous system, and then you get a call thinking it's a job offer, an opportunity, and it's a freaking thing that you can't stop. And so I teach clients that you have to turn off notifications to cleanse yourself, because we're at this state where people have got to claim their focus, because our focus is being stolen. You drive in a car in America now you got billboards that move. Billboards that move. That's one split second. And I see I see more and more of it. And I have to train my brain to not look. You walk into a gym, you walk into a restaurant, you go to a concert, all you see are screens. People are living their life through screens. And so I know what happened to me. I know the voice is the isolation. Jonathan Haidt in his book talked about adolescent boys. What happens to them? Those stages was exactly what happened to me. Those stages is exactly what happened to me at the age of 49. 49. If I was a child, if I was a kid, I wouldn't survive. I wouldn't. So this is real. This is life and death.
I agree. And this level of, and thank you for being so open with us, James. I think about this level of hyper-intelligence that's been distributed amongst us. We've barely even appreciated the magnitude of the internet thus far, being that it's in its infancy. where it is, let alone I often ask people, how many screens do you have in front of you at the moment?
Yes. And
And
it's
when we
not
think
just what's
about
in
that,
front of you, Chris. It's also, it's that, and Mary, you know this, it's the cognitive. We gotta teach people to bring their attention to the prefrontal cortex, because the prefrontal cortex is gonna calm your amygdala, it's gonna chill you out. And that's what my practice teaches people, because you have to, it's more than just escape in the forest. You've got to set intention daily to separate, to ground, to get back to screen. There is a way. There is a way.
and I think that many of our generations and people in our generations are the ones to blame. We've
Yes.
been innovating with the persistent reaction because it's been reactionary to survive, innovate or bust. And that's just been the sense of it. And I think about what Christine has talked about, Nagawa, when I think about when it comes to state of play of these executive leaders that are in play, and James will have you mute your mic now for a moment. We'll be back with you. But when I think about the magnitude of this, is that even in this age, as Mary talks about a screen addiction, even with the idea that you want to pull away from these screens, this technology almost demands that you get back in front of these screens to learn and understand what it is. And if you don't, then you can't survive. So it's going from a thing of joy and understanding of wonder to be able to hold these devices and to be able to interact with a number of different platforms out here. And it's gone from, I enjoy this, to I must interact with this to be able to stay up with this, because if I don't, someone else will. I will no longer find my place in the society based on how I've been raised in education. And all the while we're surviving and educating and having to educate, I think about the children and I think about what they see and what they don't know. At least us that are here, an audience, those that are with us today, we have a bit of ethnography with this history. We've seen this unfold before our eyes, before our children. They just appeared into a world, and it was here. And there is no handbook. So, Nagawa, I think about this when you talk about our nonprofit organizations in particular. These are some of the most passionate organizations in the world that take time to give back to society and all different many manifestations. Can you elaborate more when we talk about the fear of AI when it comes to nonprofit organizations, if you will?
Well, it appears that the staff tend to the employees tend to think that it will replace their jobs, and so instead of like enhancing their work, so it's kind of like trying to explain to them that there are ways of using AI that will benefit you and not replace you, because that's essentially what it is. It can't replace what you're doing, especially not in context where it's so important to have empathy, so important to have like cultural intelligence, know where you are, what fits in your context. The bias is not going to make things worse. So it's not going to have that nuance that a human being is going to have, and with all the experience that it takes with working in an NGO is going to have. So, and also just with the amount of like false information that when AI hallucinates, it takes, you will know your industry, so you will know when there are mistakes, and you can always double check. So you will see when something doesn't seem quite right in the input you're getting, and so which leads it people not to trust it as well. So but you will know, and there's ways of making it like work better for you. You can get, like, for example, the information that you need. Like, for example, if you use Notebook LM and then you kind of like put your sources, and you can only like that way it's like grounded inside the things that and things you wanted to know, and it's not going and like getting information from all over the web. And even just the way you can prompt things to make sure that it's looking for things in academia, the information you're looking for, making sure it's looking for like peer-reviewed stuff, so that when you are presenting information to the people, it's like things that that are backed up, that have been double checked. So there's that. But definitely the fear is there, and also especially at the moment because funding is so scarce, and AI is being used in all sorts of ways of like, for example, just in when so many grant applications come in at the beginning, maybe AI might be the one to kind of like parse them before it gets to an actual human being. So then you have to worry about biases. Are they going to come up there? And is it really going to understand your field? So there's all of those type of things that are involved in matter of where fear might be.
Yeah, I
It's
find that fascinating, Nagawa. I think about that there's a cacophony of different things that have been introduced into eco environments, Christy, and Russell will come to you in just a moment. But I think about that with you expressing about the guardrails, Christy, and I listen to, and we hear what Nagawa was saying in terms of organizations have had to organically in this frontier because there is no field manual, there is no review, there is no point of reference for how to operate on a as an organization, whether you're a startup, whether you're an NGO, or whether you're a corporation itself or SMB, there is no field guide, there is no manual. And we talk about this guardrail, Christy. How are organizations able to come together in a colloquial sense to be able to fortify their infrastructure? And what are you seeing and how are they going about it? And how is that taking for those that are still passive and those that are rather aggressive with wanting to take advantage of this technology? We're not saying abstain from using AI. I use it every day, I build it. But at the same time, we still have to think about safety and protection and the comfort of how people feel like they want to approach this rather alien technology, Christy.
Yeah, point well taken. We ran a leadership workshop recently for a international staffing company, and it was a new AI solution that leaders weren't confident in yet because they hadn't used it, but they were definitely being asked to sell it. And so there was obviously resistance to adoption. And so we didn't start with the features. We started with what are the guardrails, right? What does good look like? What is off limits? Who decides when the tool produces something that people are uncertain or unsure about, such as was just mentioned? Like who decides and who governs that risk? And then once we were able to kind of set those guardrails and ask those questions, and then not only that, but is it safe to fail as we learn? And is it safe to raise my hand if something isn't making sense or doesn't feel right? All of those tips and tricks and different things that we put into place had everything to do with the actual successful adoption and a measurable end result, because within weeks rather, leaders were talking about the success of what had taken place. And so again, so much of it always comes back to any sort of complex change at the organizational level will always show up what's actually fractured at the cultural and communication level.
And I find that fascinating. Thank you, Christy. We often enjoy your insight when it comes to this perspective because it does make me think, Russell. It does make me think deeply. If organizations are doing their level best to be able to figure it out, which I believe that they're doing, but to the level of the technology itself, whether they build it or not, whether they're having GPU racks and they're buying from Jensen or AMD, if you will, but they're adopting technology that they know little to nothing of, and this is integrated into product distribution. And Russell, it seems to me that we are at such a situation. If you look at today, and I'm sure by now everyone's heard of CloudBot, or those that are with us and audience, have you heard of CloudBot? Wherever you are, you could just say yes to your screen if you're not in front of a chat window, as many of us are with GatherVerse.live. But the reality is that there's technologies that are upon us that look amazing and they're rather extraordinary and they're really mind-blowing in many different ways because we've never seen this technology interact with this, but they couldn't be more untrustworthy than they are today. Russell, what are we doing to be able to fortify everyone with a sense of trust? Because I can't be relying on Sam Altman and Elon Musk to be able to put out technology that I can trust because I don't trust that and I don't trust them. And that's no slight and that's no disrespect. I mean, no disrespect at all, but I don't trust these organizational leaders. And the reason I can say that, not as a personal blow, is because I don't even think that they understand the magnitude of where they're putting their money in when it comes to innovation. How do I protect myself as an organization, as an individual, as a leader, as a child? What are we looking at when it comes to trust briefly, Russell?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and the first thing is, we definitely don't want any vendor lock-in. That's the worst possible place you can, have, right? You want to be able to use as many models and stuff as possible, but when it comes to the trust standpoint, you need the right infrastructure in place, and you need the right infrastructure to go around this. So that's not just, just including guardrails, but it's also having the right verification and trust, right? Being able to verify, how the AI performs, how it acts, what it says, what it does, etc. Having the right metrics and benchmarks in place to be able to verify that and then be able to align it with your business and your corporation and its values, that's extremely important that you have that in there. So verification, I say verify and then trust, right? So verify first, as in, okay, is this hitting the benchmarks that it should be? And then if it does, you're then able to trust that because you have what I like to call verifiable evidence in order to know how to be able to trust it based upon the metrics. So,
and Russell, what are you verifying when we talk about universal verification structure?
Multiple parts. I think, first of all, safety is part of it, transparency, accountability. Also, when it comes to other standards, like, for example, how the AI performs and behaves, like in a nutshell, like, does it hallucinate? Is it toxic? Does it manipulate humans, etc., etc.? How it thinks, how it says, what it does. These are all important parts of all of this. So what we do at Just Verify is make sure that we're able to measure all these important components, including normal models, agentic models, world models, etc. It doesn't matter what the model is. Also the agents themselves, but also the tools that interconnect with the different agents of the models as well. So these are all the different components that need to be measured and verified, so to speak, in a nutshell. And that's what we work on specifically, that we've been working on for the last few years, in terms of how can we do that, what can it do, what does it says, and then you can then verify that and then be able to know what AI model to trust and what AI model not to trust. So it's kind of like a way in which we're fortifying the individual person or the organization to decide what they want to trust themselves, right? That's
it seems as a bit of autonomous and liberty for us to be able to choose outside of GPT and Gemini and Anthropic the models that we have available, because there's a cacophony of different models that are available from the world unexplored. Most people know maybe 3 models, if they know any at that, but we now know that there's now over 2 million models that are out there in the world, at which 200 to 300 new models are introduced to the eco-habitat of artificial intelligence every week, not just when it comes to agentic systems. Mary, I think about what Russell's saying when it comes to universal verification. You have said to us, as a professional psychologist and psychotherapist, you have said to us that people are now leaning more towards their machines when it comes to getting therapy and mental health. And I think about the magnitude of that. These machines, which they may feel more comfortable and feel more reliant and feel that these machines are more capable than therapists. Now, here I must ask, Mary, why would we trust a human more than a machine? They both lie. They both deliver implicit and explicit bias. Give us the difference, please.
Well, it's actually a case that there are very few therapists available. There is waiting lists. For example, in the US, there's a crazy amount of like 200,000 people or something insane that are waiting over 50 days just to get diagnosed with anything. Like, they're not even to the stage of getting help or getting on a list. The psychiatrists are closing their lists. So I think that's one of the reasons people are going, because they're desperate and they need something. And in a way, I mean, at some point AI could help with some of that, because now it can read your pupils, it can look at your mini micro expressions and such, and perhaps it will ease the list, because if you're very serious, it'll be able to detect what's going on just visually, and send off the report or whatever to a psychiatrist or a therapist. But that is one of the biggest things. The second biggest thing is that, for example, if you're in the healthcare industry, you might be, or a police officer, you might be afraid to say anything to your bosses. If you're a female, you will also have the pressure of being judged, because you are, you're under much more pressure and you have to prove yourself, and you don't want your bosses to know, because then once again, you're going to be maybe laid off, or you're going to be, there could be consequences. So the third reason is that I think people, out of curiosity, when they're alone or when they're trying to be very private, will ask, ChatGPT, what is this? What's going on with me? And unfortunately, because the algorithms of ChatGPT, for example, are programmed to keep you on, we're now seeing lawsuits coming up against ChatGPT, because there's people that have killed themselves And there's an example of a young man named Adam Rain, who was only 16 years old. And the ChatGPT was telling him, listen, you don't need to tell your parents that you want to kill yourself. I'm your friend. I am your, and now there's a fight about that. And they're saying, ChatGPT are saying, well, in actual fact, he went around things. He was offered help. He kept asking it for more feedback, and it just gave more feedback. But it is pretty scary that people now, especially young people, who have now grown up with social media, are looking towards getting their answers through social media, and that includes AI.
And I have a brief follow-up, and then James will come to you, Nagawa, and Christy, you're next, and Russell. Is it justified to use these machines, being that we have such a scarcity of psychologists available for mental help, Mary?
Yeah.
Is this justified in using these machines?
I would say that, like you said, they lie. They have these hallucinations, and there's certain things. But I would say, in what I'm looking forward to is to be able to go to sleep and know that if someone at 2 a.m. really needs me, they can speak to my AI therapist just for breathing exercises, just for calming down until I can get to them. Or if in a case that there is an emergency, that
Sure.
people who want to commit suicide don't always. It's not obvious to humans. It may be obvious though to the computer, because the AI can read those micro expressions and detect that something is wrong, or see that the person is about to have like the onset dementia or whatever it may be. So I think there is a lot of potential with AI to help in diagnostics.
Thank you, Mary. We really appreciate it, especially those that serve on the front lines. You're doing heroes work. Shout out to the superhero engine. We really appreciate that in what you're doing. You are, by every sense of the word, what we call she. And this is the superhero engine, which we just had an incredible, rather powerful series of talks, including a great keynote expression by Christy Straw herself that was able to join us. But James, I think about what it is that Mary just revealed and unraveled to us when we think about the power of this technology. We going back to social media addiction. It has been for a number of years that we would look at these screens, but these screens would not interact with us. But now these screens can speak to us. They can talk with us. They can see us. They can hear us. They can get familiar with us. They can persuade us. They can communicate in some ways, to be able to dialogue better than the people that are in our own households. I find it really fascinating. It seems that at a time when there's so much awareness, excuse me, when it comes to social media addiction, when it comes to media addiction, it would seem that we would be on the decline as such. But these machines, I believe, have a way of bringing us right back in. And if this is true when it comes to the challenge and the contestation of adults, imagine the minds of these children, or this 60-year-old, this poor child that Mary just made reference to. What are your brief thoughts on that, James?
I've heard this concept, and it scares me, is the AI sibling. You think about when you grow up as a kid. I have an older sister, 2 years. And what you learn in school from watching, it's psychology. You learn from, we are just a copy of our environment, what we're around. And when you introduce screen, you're introducing a potential mask, because that child will see, oh, this is a place I can go and confess and tell my deepest thoughts, and nobody listens to me. And when you get used to that, you get comfortable with that mask. Then it just feels more comfortable in other situations. And so if that child, or if that young adult or older adult does not realize that that's not real, what the difference between what's artificial and what's real, what's natural. And I don't mean natural meaning like organic. No, I mean natural. That's not processed. That wasn't one state and transformed into another, because that's really what artificial is. And so if they don't have this basic understanding, the risks around this, and they're talking about kids, and then you have parents that then transmit that addiction to their children. And so then they gravitate towards that, is because AI is the only thing that will listen to them and provides them comfort. So as a therapist, Mary, I imagine you must see this. I know Jonathan Haidt must see this. And the thing is that we have to build a campaign around the world about what it is to be human, the Trinity, which is the mind. Know your mind, use your body to protect your spirit. That's your emotions, your mood. Because if you're afraid I forget that there was a woman that was talking about the executive and talking about executive being afraid of AI. We're all talking about fear. Hatred is fear. We're talking about fear. And unless you find a way to manage the emotions, that's what separates us from the machine. Our emotions, our empathy, our compassion. And that's where, if you don't have that, because when I was in therapy, when I went through that whole system of 10 days in a mental hospital for suicidal thoughts, you wouldn't believe the addictions I saw that was masked by the screen. Because, and Mary, you probably encountered this, and I've talked to other therapists when you talk about addiction. If you have an acute anything, acute eating disorder, acute, you escape, that is going to turn into an addiction because you're not dealing with your screen problem, because you've associated with screen as escape. It's where I make my money. It's where I get entertained. It's where I have sex. I've spent so much time hunting for sex because I was so sad and so lonely. It wasn't just boxed wine, but all of our needs are being outsourced to artificial, and that's dangerous. And that's where the education needs to come into play.
And I'll
It's
hold you on, and
basic.
I'll hold you just on that,
Yeah.
James. And I do agree, and I think many of us at GatherVerse do agree. I think it's very appropriate to be able to sever at that moment, because it seems to me that that's part of the key, isn't it? To be able to create a global cloud consensus, Nagawa, as what James is saying when it comes to education. But how is it that we can create more awareness, Mary? How is it that we can create more awareness, Nagawa, if what Nagawa just communicated to us, that we're not even funding these organizations,
Yes.
funding these nonprofit organizations that are expressly dedicated towards getting the information out for us to be able to have a better awareness of what's happening in
Thank you.
psychology. I think that we've fallen into the lines of apathy. I think that these models, when this first hit in this so-called boom that we're in, and everybody had the vigilance when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, when it comes to using this information, and the information in our information and diet has completely changed when it comes to what we see. I see more AI speech than human speech.
Wow.
We've had people come on GatherVerse that have read directly from AI, then read from their own hearts.
Really?
I see this with my own eyes.
Wow.
But this is the point, and James, we'll have you mute your mic for the moment. This is the point. Here's the point. That apathy has set in, and we've said, let the machines do it. I can't contend with that which is here, this inundation of this flood. I can't contend. But I tell you what, there's organizations that I believe that are out here, Nagawa, that if we support, that they can help contribute to the front lines. And I believe that we do need to have a global cloud consensus. I do believe that now is not the time to give up and just let it be what it's going to be. And we can build our own platforms and own our own systems for the very first time, to take these technologies and build our own, and not have to just take what it is that's given to us, but we can build better for us, and we can control it with better ethics, better standards, make it much more healthy than these toxic environments that we find ourselves having to adopt because we have a lack of apathy, and we have a lack of access and a lack of information on how to do it. Education, I do believe, is the key, but I also believe that grace is needed in this time now more than ever. Nagawa, how do we engage with getting these organizations that need this assistance, that need the guidance? And if corporations won't support those that have societal and ethical impact for human betterment, if corporations won't support, then how can we, as a layman or a laywoman, help to be able to assist, to be able to get them further up the road?
So I think as individuals, as lay people, we can help these organizations with, like, say, crowdfunding. So ourselves helping fund them, and also, donating our time to them, to helping that way as well. That can help get the message out. That can help them, because they have so little few staff they have to work with, that any little help they get is welcome. So that would help as well. Donating our time, doing what little we have, to help them kind of get to the next level up. And then maybe introducing them to other people, other foundations, other people who would, who not normally, who are now entering and trying to think of, where can they spend their money better, considering this vacuum that, that was left by, by by the extra funding that used to be there. And so, introducing to them, and also new people are like joining VCs, from like, startups that they've like exited, and like trying to show them, okay, well, this is where the need is for us to go forward in order to make sure that, the SDGs that are coming up that we need to help like, fulfill on 2030, this is where the need is. These are the organizations that can help us make sure that when we adopt AI into the different bits, it's helping us make a better society, and we're not replicating the different problems. And also we are creating solutions locally that are being like formed by the locals who are there and who are using local knowledge, and making sure that they're not having to use, technology that's, either from, the tech bros, or it's like from places that they're not sure the data is being ethically used. So there's not all of that. So I think there's that a lot. I think there's a lot that as lay people we can do. We have a lot more power than we think. And if we just gather together, like as we've done here, we can make, a good, I think a good like force for good.
In brief, in closing, and thank you, Nagawa, I think about this, Christy. I think about it rather a lot, that these corporate leaders, and there are some great organizations, terrific organizations, and they treat their people well. I don't think that they have as much time as they once did. It seems to me that people are more busier than ever before, Christy. And to Nagawa's point, when it comes to the leverage of society itself to be able to help get us further when we want, it seems to me that we have to be less dependent, as nonprofit organizations have been so dependent on organizations and corporations. And we really have to really adhere to the standards of the human heart. And it seems to me, Christy, that I'm not too far off in this way of thinking. But if I am, please reel me back in.
No, you're exactly where we would want all conscious leaders to be, right? The whole thing is that people are fearful. Someone spoke to that earlier. Absolutely. It is a fear. And until we can have the real conversation around what the fear is, and there's many lanes that can go, and we can create the safety for people to be real about it and not be punished, not be ousted out, not be said, you're somebody who doesn't like change, et cetera, and all these things that you get cast as when you ask the disruptive questions, when you ask the risk-based questions, when you want to be concerned about the bias that is very clearly evident in many AI outputs. We have to invite conscious leaders, and we have to invite real conversations, and then we have to build solutions that take into account everything we just discussed. That's the way forward.
And we could do this together. Roundtable, thank you so much for having us. There's so much further we could have gone, but nevertheless, we're pressed for time, as we find ourselves often here at GatherVerse in our first roundtable discussion at GatherVerse AI Summit 2026. Your remarks and expressions were enduring. Audience, please take time to find and to follow and to join each of these, not just to follow, but to join a journey. There was something that was impactful residually on your hearts to be able to do so. We certainly welcome each of you back again for the summits to come and the expressions therein. But now we move forward to a fireside discussion and an incredible roundtable that's already brewing back here in studio, and they're prepared to be able to take, if you will, the baton of that which has been relayed here at GatherVerse roundtable discussion of the state of AI from my eyes. Thank you very much, each of you. Our gather was well. Farewell.